Hey, deep divers. Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're plunging into a really fascinating and quite pointed set of sources. They offer a very specific perspective on the Democratic Party.
That's right.
Our mission today is, well, to thoroughly unpack these materials, pull out the core arguments, and really highlight the insights they're trying to get across. We're going to give you a quick but comprehensive grasp of the viewpoints presented.
And what's really fascinating here, I think, is our main source material. It's an audio clip, and it's explicitly titled, Proof the Democratic Party Are Full of Lunatics.mp3.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, that title alone tells you a lot about the lens, doesn't it? It's highly critical. It lays out a whole series of accusations, observations, not just about the party overall, but also targets some pretty prominent figures within it.
Okay.
So we're going to systematically explore what this source claims, piece by piece, to really understand the narrative and the specific points it's emphasizing.
Okay, let's unpack this then. We'll start by looking at the broader criticisms, the source levels against the Democratic Party's overall health, its standing, that kind of thing. Then we'll zoom in on some of the individual figures it spotlights. We'll examine the specific points, maybe even some direct quotes the source uses to back up its claims.
Right.
And it's really crucial to remember our goal here isn't to agree or disagree, right? We're not endorsing or refuting these claims. We're purely presenting what the source itself says. That way, you can fully grasp its particular perspective and the arguments it's putting forward.
Exactly. Just laying out the information as presented in the source.
So our source doesn't waste any time. It kicks things off with a pretty bold statement, actually. It likens the Democratic Party to someone who has fallen and I can't get up.
That's vivid.
It is. It suggests the party is somehow, I don't know, behind the times, maybe struggling to keep pace with a changing world.
So from the source's perspective, what does it actually say about the party's overall health? Where does it stand right now? Well, if we connect that analogy to the bigger picture the source is painting, it's pretty stark. It portrays what it sees as a party in decline.
Decline how?
It claims, for instance, that there are now more registered independents than registered members of either major party. It presents this as evidence of a significant sort of fundamental shift in political affiliation.
Okay.
And the source's argument is that the Democratic Party just hasn't adapted to this shift. It sees this as a symptom of a larger problem, that the party has become, and this is their term, an insider game.
An insider game. What do they mean by that?
The source explicitly states that, quote, the DNC has never allowed outsiders or brand new people to rise through the ranks. Now, that's a significant claim because the source implies this resistance to, new blood and fresh ideas is precisely why the party is losing touch with the broader electorate and, well, experiencing this perceived decline in influence.
That's a strong claim about it being an insider game. How does the source connect that perceived insularity, that closed-off nature, to a broader lack of trust among voters? Does it give specific examples?
It does. It attributes what it calls a lack of trust directly to claims that the 2016 primary election was, quote, rigged.
Ah, okay, the 2016 primary.
Yes. It focuses heavily on the narrative that Bernie Sanders was, quote, snubbed. The implication is that the party leadership intentionally blocked his path.
Right.
And this narrative, according to the source, is further fueled by the perception that Hillary Clinton had bought or muscled her way into it.
Okay.
The source argues this led to Sanders supporters being, quote, denied a chance to speak at key moments or on key platforms. So it uses these examples to set this backdrop of deep-seated distrust, internal unfairness,
Right.
portraying the party as actively alienating its own base and reinforcing that idea that it's out of touch, maybe not truly democratic internally.
So, after laying that foundation party in decline, internal issues, trust crisis, the source then really zeroes in on individual Democratic figures.
Right.
And it doesn't pull any punches, like you said.
Not at all.
It starts with Minnesota Representative Keith Ellison, calls him one of the lunatics in line to take over the Iron Throne at the DNC.
Yeah, the Game of Thrones reference there. Quite a loaded image.
Definitely implies a power struggle. So what specific accusations or criticisms does the source level against him? Particularly, how does it frame his approach to President Trump?
Well, the core criticism, according to the source, centers on what it describes as his outright arrogance.
Arrogance in what way?
In calling for the impeachment of President Trump. Now, interestingly, the source does acknowledge, almost like a side note, that Donald Trump has already done a number of things which legitimately raise the question of impeachment.
Okay, so it concedes that point.
It does, briefly.
Yeah.
But the main thrust of its argument about Ellison isn't about whether impeachment itself is legitimate. It's about Ellison's manner in pursuing it. It frames his actions as being fueled by personal arrogance, not, say, genuine concern for constitutional principles. The implication is that his focus on impeachment is more about a show of power or maybe personal animosity, rather than a reasoned legal or political stance. That's the source's take.
Okay. Then the source shifts focus to House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi. And again, the description is pretty intense. It suggests the crossed wires in her brain continued to malfunction.
Yeah, that's particularly inflammatory language.
It is. So what specific instances or statements does the source use to try and illustrate this provocative claim, especially, it seems, in the context of healthcare?
Right. The source tries to connect this alleged malfunction to healthcare policy. It quotes John Kasich, but it gets his state wrong. It says the governor of Illinois when he was actually governor of Ohio.
Oh, interesting detail. Oh,
yeah, it quotes Kasich saying, "Thank God for Medicaid." Then it puts that next to a quote it attributes to Martin Luther, stating that inequality in healthcare access is the most damaging.
Martin Luther, the reformer.
That's who the source attributes it to, yes. The intent here seems to be to imply that Pelosi's stance, or her approach to healthcare policy, or maybe even her broader political understanding, is somehow flawed or illogical when you look at these two quotes side by side.
So it's suggesting a disconnect.
Exactly. A disconnect in her thinking, or maybe a disregard for fundamental healthcare access framed through this juxtaposition. That's how the source tries to back up that malfunctioning wires claim.
Got it. Next up, the source moves to New York Senator Chuck Schumer. He's described as taking his visceral bag of Democratic Party dogma to the American public.
Another very evocative phrase.
Right.
Suggests rigidity, maybe being ideologically driven.
Right. What specific action of Schumer's does the source highlight to support that characterization, and how does it portray his interaction with the public?
It focuses specifically on Schumer's public call for Jeff Sessions, who was the Attorney General at the time, to recuse himself from investigations related to the Trump administration.
Okay, the recusal call.
Yes. The source quotes Schumer expressing worry that Sessions' closeness to Trump would mean the investigation, quote, certainly won't have the appearance of impartiality and may not be impartial itself. But what the source really highlights is Schumer's direct address to the TV audience. He explicitly encourages people watching to tell your senator congressman if they agree with his call for recusal.
Ah, so it's framing it as sort of rallying the public based on party lines?
Pretty much. The source presents this as Schumer not just stating his view, but actively trying to mobilize public opinion, using what it portrays as ingrained Democratic Party doctrine or dogma to influence policy and perception.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
This brings us to California Representative Maxine Waters, and the source uses really strong language here. Calls her maximum overdrive Maxine Waters, leading the charge with falsehoods blazing, and accuses her of resorting to an all-out ambush on the intellect of the silent majority of American voters. That's intense.
Extremely intense language.
Given this highly charged description, what does the source say is her most repeated mantra? Her key message?
The source really, really hammers home her repeated use of the I word.
The I word, impeachment.
Exactly. It quotes her directly. My colleagues and the leadership would not like to hear me say the I word, but I say it over and over again. Impeachment, impeachment, impeachment.
So the source emphasizes that repetition.
Absolutely. It presents it as her signature, almost defiant mantra, portrays her as singularly focused on impeaching President Trump, maybe to the exclusion of other things. This repetition is really highlighted as a defining characteristic of her political messaging, at least from this source's point of view.
And the source doesn't just stop at her public statements about impeachment. It actually delves into her background, suggesting maybe a reason for what it sees as her, I don't know, intense anger or fervent stance.
Yep.
It points out she was investigated for 3 years by the House Ethics Committee.
Right, brings that up.
So according to the source, what was the core issue of that investigation? What were the specific allegations?
Yeah, this is a pretty significant part of the source's narrative about her. The core issue, as the source details it, revolved around what it calls favors resulting in the $12 million TARP bailout funds her husband's bank received.
Okay, TARP funds. That was the Troubled Asset Relief Program from the financial crisis, right?
Exactly, from the 2007-2008 crisis. The source specifically names one United Bank. It alleges this bank was given special favors due to Waters' connections to allow One United Bank to plead with the Treasury Department after the financial crisis. And it goes even further, claiming that executives at One United Bank financed Waters' campaign.
Wow. So the source is trying to connect her political rhetoric to alleged past financial dealings.
That seems to be the goal. By highlighting this investigation and these claims, the source aims to link her current fiery rhetoric with what it presents as a history of potentially self-serving conduct or conflicts of interest. It suggests her political positions might be influenced by these personal financial entanglements.
Those are very serious allegations presented by the source. Did it mention any other instances where her conduct or ethics were questioned by, say, other organizations?
Yes, it did. The source specifically mentions that Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington, that's CREW, the nonprofit watchdog group, named Waters to its list of corrupt members of Congress.
Oh, really? When was that?
According to the source, she was named in their reports multiple times for 2005, 2006, 2009, and 2011.
Okay.
So the source includes this detail to try and bolster its claim about a pattern of alleged ethical issues surrounding Representative Waters.
Okay. Got it. So beyond the impeachment focus and these ethics concerns, the source also quotes Waters using incredibly strong language. It says she called some people a bunch of scumbags.
Yes, that quote is highlighted.
Who is she referring to when she used that term, according to the source? And how does the source interpret that kind of language?
Well, the source includes her clarification. She's quoted as saying she was talking about all of these people who are organized with these oil and gas interests that's in the administration and friends of the United States. This back-channeling that you see, these are a bunch of scumbags.
Okay, so targeting specific groups she saw as connected to oil and gas and the administration.
Right. And the source then specifically asks if she meant the Secretary of State was included in that group, indicating that figure was part of her critique.
And how does the source frame this?
It uses this quote to characterize these individuals, and by extension Waters and others it critiques, as mouthpieces of the imploding Democratic Party. It calls them as filthy a group of scumbags as they come, and accuses them of desperately sowing division, particularly in the shadow of former President Barack Obama.
Wow.
So the source presents her strong language as indicative of what it sees as aggressive, polarizing rhetoric common among certain Democratic figures.
We've definitely unpacked a lot of critical claims here about the Democratic Party overall, its leaders, Keith Ellison, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, and especially Maxine Waters, covering her impeachment focus, the ethics investigation in details, and that very strong scumbags language.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Given the very pointed nature of all these criticisms, it seems really crucial now to understand the lens, right? Where is this coming from? What's the origin of this particular material? Who's behind this voice?
That's key, and the source material is actually quite explicit about its origin. It identifies itself as coming from John Bound for Infowars.com.
Infowars.
Yes.
Yep.
And it's direct in describing itself. It states, quote, Infowars has become the most influential media outlet in America. We're making freedom go viral. It also actively promotes its Infowars Prime platform. It describes that platform as a new weapon in the epic battle against the globalist.
The globalist? That's a term they use frequently, isn't it?
It is. It's often used by Infowars to describe what it views as a powerful, interconnected elite trying to undermine national sovereignty and traditional values. This platform, the source says, offers things like exclusive insider videos, live high-definition feeds, and live coverage of events and breaking news on location.
So knowing the sources of Infowars provides significant context.
Absolutely. It helps understand the highly charged language, the specific critical viewpoints, the framing of globalist. It all fits within that known perspective.
And the audio, how does it end? Does it have a specific call to action?
It does. It concludes with a very specific, almost a rallying cry. The closing line is, quote, "If you can hear my voice, you are the resistance."
You are the resistance, yes.
Yes. Very declarative, very direct. It tells you a lot about the perspective,
Yeah.
right, and the intended audience. It's clearly designed not just to inform from its viewpoint, but also to galvanize and empower those who align with that critical perspective.
So we've taken quite the deep dive today into a very, very pointed critique of the Democratic Party. We've systematically explored how this specific source, Infowars, frames the party's broad challenges, its internal issues, and the specific actions and rhetoric it attributes to figures like Keith Ellison, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, and Maxine Waters, including those details about her ethics investigation and her use of terms like scumbags.
And this deep dive really reveals a particular narrative, doesn't it?
Yeah.
One that views the party as disconnected, internally flawed, and its leaders as highly controversial figures.
Definitely.
And understanding that the source is InfoWars, knowing its stated mission, provides that crucial context for the language, the viewpoints, the framing of issues like trust or ethical shortcomings. It's all filtered through that distinct ideological lens.
Our goal, as always, is to help you process complex information quickly and thoroughly. And this deep dive certainly gives us a lot to consider from one very particular perspective. What stands out to you from this critical portrayal?
Yeah, and reflecting on that, this deep dive really raises an important question for you, the listener, to consider moving forward. How does understanding the specific source of information, knowing it's InfoWars in this case, knowing its stated mission, how does that impact your interpretation of the claims being made?
Right.
Especially when you're dealing with such strong political criticisms. Does knowing the lens change how you process the message? Something to think about as you encounter information from all sorts of sources out there.